Yeah, and I think that's kind of worth talking about too, like how in marriage there might be seasons where one of you guys like feels something like earlier than the other, and kind of like how to navigate that process where one of you is like, okay, I really feel like this is what we should do, and the other person's like, I'm not so sure. And I know like with couples, like that's quite common with something like having children. You know, one
Yeah.
person might be like, yeah, I'm super ready, and the other person's like, I think we should wait. Or moving, just like big life decisions. What would you say we learned from that process of kind of like me being in a place where I was like, I really think we need to do this, and like feeling that, and you kind of like being, because it did cause a little bit of tension, I think, like
Yeah. No,
for a little while.
it definitely caused a lot of tension in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember to the point where we spoke to our pastor
Yeah.
about it, and he kind of guided us on how we could be better at hearing each other out
Right.
and kind of honoring, because I think you're quite good at receiving, I would say, messages from God at a spiritual level.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you'll see things spiritually before they happen.
Yeah.
And I think I'm more inclined to be like the planner, like okay, I hear that prophecy.
Right.
Like, how do we now practicalize it?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think some of the lessons that we learned was actually we're not on opposite sides of the fence.
Right.
We can actually combine forces.
Mm-hmm.
So what that looked like for us was things that I was worried about mostly was around the finances.
Yeah.
And you were saying you felt like the next place should be a house with extra space
Mm-hmm.
for the kids and for the business and all of these things that we wanted to do.
Right.
And I was like, okay, cool. So how about we try and work within these financial parameters
Mm-hmm.
so that way when we do move, we kind of tick the boxes of this is our next level place, and
Yeah.
it doesn't create so much additional pressure
Mm-hmm.
on us that it no longer feels good even when we get there.
Right. Yeah. And I think, yeah, like it kind of speaks to the fact that, like, I think it's easy to be discouraged in that situation, but it actually turned out to be a real blessing. And it always does, like, that you were a bit more like practical. Because even like this place, I knew like what I wanted from a home, but because you were so focused on like, we have to be realistic about what's financially possible, it meant that we were actually able to find a place like that's pretty much the same rent that we were paying at our old place, but for way more. And I think if you weren't there, like, okay, let's see what's possible, we probably just would have gone for something way out of our budget, basically, and then you end up like in trouble. So yeah, I think it's like honoring the fact that like there's something, even if you're not quite on the same page yet, leaning into what the other person's saying. So it was you kind of leaning into, okay, we have to have a little bit of faith with some moves, even before it makes sense. And me leaning into, God can call you to do something, but the timing has to be right as well. Like the circumstances have to be right as well.
Yeah.
And you can do things to not make the move so difficult. And that's a big thing that I've learned from you, because I think, like I said, like my nature is like jump and then figure everything out. Like when I went to New York a few years back, I didn't know how I was going to make money, barely knew how I was going to eat. I got like a dingy apartment in East Flatbush, and I was like, I'm just going to rock it out. And it was tough compared to like if I just did like a little bit more planning, a little bit more saving, a little bit more research. And now having a family too, you can't always just kind of like bootleg it, because yeah, you have like a kid to think about too. So yeah, I think that was like a big like learning lesson.